Hi, this is Rick from For Community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others, but also with God. Well, we get to Proverbs chapter 10. Yay! Yay us! In Proverbs chapter 10, which is what this video is based on, if you've been following the series, we're working through Proverbs, there has been a transition. We're out of those more narrative passages in Proverbs, the first nine chapters, and now in chapter 10, we begin all of the wise sayings. And for me, this gets a little more difficult to try to do a series through Proverbs because there are so many, like which one or which two should I be basing videos on? But I think for this video, I think I've captured one of the wise sayings in chapter 10 that kind of summarizes the entire chapter, which is pretty hard. So here's what I got for this video. In this video, we're going to look at Proverbs chapter 10, verse 24, and I'm going to try to summarize at least some of the content that I see in this chapter. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 24. The fears of the wicked will be fulfilled. The hopes of the godly will be granted. In my opinion, this kind of summarizes at least a bunch of the content we see in Proverbs chapter 10. I'm not sure it covers it all well, but it does kind of cover it. And so I'm going to request from you that this coming Sunday when we meet on Zoom, would you please go through chapter 10 and would you please pick out one or two of these wise sayings here so that we can talk about what's jumping out to you, because this video is not going to cover the whole thing. And so whatever you bring to the table is just as relevant as what I'm going to bring to the conversation right now. So for this video, I'm going to use this verse and I'm going to break this down into 2 points. And what I think is these 2 points are going to help us to get a sense of what's going on sort of underneath the hood of all of these wise sayings in chapter 10. My opinion, to help us better understand what's behind these wise sayings. So here's the first point. Rejecting common sense has real consequences. The text says the fears of the wicked will be fulfilled. So here's how I see this. Even without the Bible, we have a radar. We are generally tuned into what is objectively or absolutely right and wrong. We may get lost in the details, particularly around application, but I think that people generally know right and wrong. And that tends to inform us of what is generally common among all of us, aka common sense, and how that should inform our lifestyle and interactions with each other. So generally speaking, our common sense helps us to understand how to live in a way that doesn't lead to our own harm or the harm of others. That's common sense. And common sense informs our understanding that if we do live in a way that would bring harm to ourselves or others, the consequence is that we will receive harm, like punishment, beatings, having no friends, having no money, living in fear, always being on the run. So common sense, living according to common sense, helps us avoid consequences. So in my opinion, chapter 10 includes thoughts around the idea that not only is there common sense, but there are consequences to ignoring common sense, and those consequences tend to be unavoidable. In this chapter, we see references to the grief of a mother, soon poor, is a disgrace, rots away, fall flat on their faces, stirs up quarrels, will be beaten with a rod, invites disaster. We see that there are consequences. When I work with clients, just a little illustration to help me share my idea about why these consequences are so prevalent here. When I work with clients to help them move toward their preferred career, preferred lifestyle, lived experience, towards safety, whatever, I sometimes tell them when they're creating a better picture of their future and what they want to move toward, that it's okay to keep a little fear in their picture. I think that when we create, say, a vision for ourselves, and then do the hard work of working on our own lives so that we grow to a higher level, and it is really hard work to work on ourselves, it makes a lot of sense to have about 80% of this wonderful, awesome vision, idea, picture ahead of us. And I think it makes a whole lot of sense to have about 20% of the picture behind us that looks like an absolute disaster. 80% of the heaven ahead of us and 20% of the hell behind us. I don't think we're motivated only by what we want to gain, but we're also motivated by pain. Pain is an awesome teacher. So for me, I want to remember the pain, at least some of the pain that lies behind me, to remind me that I never want to go backwards. I always want to be living a life of common sense, chasing values. And I know that if I give that up, there's pain waiting for me. So 20% of my vision needs to be behind me in the form of pain. That's my thought here. Proverbs, however, presents something quite a bit more extreme than that. I'm a nice guy compared to Proverbs. Proverbs presents us with about 50% of a great vision ahead of us, and then 50% of a horrible vision that may be behind us, that hopefully is behind us. And then it calls us to make a choice right now to avoid the consequences of foolishness. It's saying stay on the right track, or it's saying to make the initial choice to live a life of wisdom. As you read chapter 10 on your own, please take a moment to notice both the reward and the consequence. It's very easy to see both. They're set up as absolutes, and these are calling on you to choose wisdom, and is doing that by showing you both a great future or the alternative that you want behind you, not ahead of you. And they're setting up a scenario that a lack of choice, I'm not going to choose either, is generally the choice to choose the path that leads towards consequence, because wisdom is a choice. And if you don't choose wisdom, then you generally have chosen the alternative, which is the choice of foolishness that ends in consequence rather than reward. Using common sense is always ours to choose. We're never forced into it. We don't just naturally gravitate to the choice of common sense. It's always a choice. But we do always land at either reward or consequence. That's unavoidable. We will always either have reward or consequence. So since we always land at either consequence or reward, choose to choose wisdom. I think that's the inspiration here behind these wise sayings. There's no room for procrastination. We are always heading toward either consequence or reward. Procrastination will be consequence in a lot of cases. So it's asking us, please choose to choose wisdom. Now here's a really big idea for me as I highlight this particular wise saying. The idea is there is no escape of consequences. A person may get by unnoticed for a little while, but the consequences always come. And at this point, it also may be helpful to remember that these are not just wise sayings based on common sense. It's more than that. There is an absolute morality. There is an absolute judge. And at the end of the story, the path of wisdom ultimately leads to a relationship with God through Jesus that will last forever in eternal reward. But the path of foolishness, which is the choice to disregard Jesus, leads to a lack of a relationship with Jesus forever. What am I saying? I am saying that you'll get what you choose. Choose a relationship with Jesus, and that's what you'll get. Choose to have no relationship with Jesus, and that's what you get. The reward and consequence of those two choices are inescapable, so please choose wisely. Okay, I'm going to leave this first point here. When we meet to talk, let's talk about the wise sayings that jump out to you. So pick one, pick two, and let's notice the consequence, let's notice the reward, and let's try to figure out how do we make the wise choice? How do we make sure that we are moving in the direction of the reward and away from the consequence? Here's the second point that I really want to share with you, which is also part of that verse. Embracing common sense has real rewards. The text says, the hopes of the godly will be granted. Here's just a little pause here so that we understand what's happening with these wise sayings. These are principles and not promises. I wish they were promises. They're not promises. They're just kind of generally speaking, this is how life plays out. So it says the hopes of the godly will be granted. It's true that sometimes the hope of the godly are not granted, whether you're a Jesus follower or not. These are not promises, they're principles. Generally speaking, living common sense lives leads to benefit. Generally speaking, living as a Jesus follower is more beneficial. And speaking in absolutes, living as a Jesus follower will grant a person the hope that they have, which is the second coming and the resurrection. So let's pause here. For this week, how do you feel about picking one or two of these sayings in chapter 10? And then when we come together, sharing what your take is on it. You can even do that in the comments. Just, take one or two of the Proverbs that you like, the wise sayings in chapter 10 that you like, and you can comment on it, and we can have a text discussion. That's fine too. So that's it from me to you for now. Would you please like? Would you please share? Would you please subscribe? Also, would you please ask for the link? We meet on Sundays at 1:30 or 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock just for guys. For community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. I'll see you next time.